Do you understand the nature of familiar spirits? Well, since becoming a Christian, I have encountered so many personal deliverance battles from demonic spirits. They're all seem to be connected to my personal and family history as well as my calling in God. You see, I'm a prophet to the nations, an intercessor, and a deliverance minister. And when I say I'm a deliverance minister, I don't just bring deliverance to individuals from personal demons, but I also work to bring regional deliverance, which is more about subduing territorial spirits. And so the most recent area of deliverance that the Holy Spirit brought to my attention was very challenging to identify. It took me a year of grappling with it in various forms before I finally reached the point of utter frustration. And I asked him and I said, what is this persistent issue that I keep dealing with? And the answer came. It was clear, it was direct, and the Holy Spirit spoke to my heart and he says, you are dealing with familiar spirits. Now, that's not something I was accustomed to hearing. I wasn't accustomed to hearing familiar spirits or what's behind this, that, and the other. That's actually the first time I actually heard him say that, and that's what caught my attention. And so when I sought the Holy Spirit to learn how to handle them, the response was equally clear, equally direct. And he said, they're obstructing the new things I'm doing. You must decree that they are consumed by fire. And that's Psalm 97, verse 3. Now, in her book, Breaking the Power of Familiar Spirits, Kim Daniels, she made this description. She said, a familiar spirit is any demonic assignment that surveys and studies people, territories, and families' bloodlines. The goal of their assignment is to gather spiritual intelligence that will open doors to instigate death and destruction. They enter and they gain power in people's lives by disguising themselves as something common, something familiar, while operating unawares through people, places, and things. Now, I was at a conference in Australia not too long ago. It was one of the most powerful conferences I've ever been able to host. And I take no credit, I give all glory to Jesus Christ. But I'm talking like the spiritual laughter of the Holy Spirit came upon the whole group in a level that I haven't seen in at least 2 decades. And then there was a mass deliverance, so spontaneous by the Holy Spirit. I don't even have words to describe it. It was so deep and it was so real and authentic. Definitely something initiated by the Holy Spirit. We also had glory rain fall inside of the building. I've never experienced this personally in my life. I've read about it. It was rain inside the building. It was gold. And there was some gold flakes and even some angel feathers that began to appear. Just shocking to me because you suddenly get the fear of the Lord in you. You're like, I don't deserve this much spiritual manifestation, and it really checks you on a whole nother level. But anyway, there was one area that I felt that I needed to address. I needed to bring deliverance to affected attendees from familiar spirits at this particular conference. Now, keep in mind, there were several Asian, tribal, and indigenous peoples in attendance, like Singapore, Philippines, Tonga, Samoa, Australian indigenous, Polynesian, New Zealand, Maori, and more. I mean, it was a whole conglomerate like that. These are people groups that traditionally worship ancestral spirits before believing in Jesus. Now, ancestral spirits, just to give you more details, are actually demons. They attach themselves to families in the guise of deceased relatives. They're also known as familiar or family spirits, and their goal is to control an entire bloodline for demonic purposes. Now, ancestral worship, it involves religious beliefs and practices consisting of prayers and offerings to the spirits of dead relatives. And it's found in many cultures worldwide. Prayers and offerings are made because it's believed the spirits of ancestors continue in the natural world and can influence the futures and fortunes of living relatives. And so ancestor spirits are thought to mediate between the living and the creator, and on and on. Now, these conference attendees were Christians at various levels of maturity. And I was fairly confident that they were not worshiping their ancestors, but I knew in my spirit that many of them were still bound to ancestral worship. I just didn't understand how. And so I began to minister a prayer for freedom, And while ministering to this, and keep in mind, I'm not experiencing breakthrough at all. I'm going after it, but there's no breakthrough that I can sense or feel or see any sort of demonstration that we're breaking through, we're hitting the sweet spot of this. Not at all. I even encountered a familiar spirit standing up inside of one man that was there and trying to intimidate me. I'm a seer, I can see these things, and I watched this happen. And basically what it told me is that this is going to take more than the traditional chain breaking prayer I've effectively engaged in before. Well, what was part of the problem? Well, part of the problem was that you have to change an ingrained mentality to overcome a familiar spirit. Familiar spirits can be hosted through our hardwired personal beliefs, beliefs that are rooted in our family of origin, the kind that open the doors to demonic affliction generation after generation. They can come through demonic covenants made by generations past that were done in secret, and yet they call out to familiar spirits. But you know what? I've found that the Holy Spirit, he'll actually tell you the secret if you start seeking him. So if that's something that's at play, you might want to ask him, and he'll show it to you, either word of knowledge, dream, somehow he'll get it across to you. But I encourage you to seek the Holy Spirit to reveal areas that are bound to familiar spirits in your life. And this is something that I've been speaking into, I've been calling out, and I want you to also consider joining my mentorship.